everybody. Welcome back to the Reptile Radio Extravaganza.
Hello, hello.
This is Dan.
Brandon.
And, I think we're going to have a fun little show this week. We're going to talk about tarantulas and some recent current events in our reptile collection. So let me start out with that. I've had a good week, I feel like.
Yeah?
I came home from work on Monday, or I think it was Tuesday, who cares? And I discovered that my large Mexican curly hair female had molted. And I don't know if it's just me or if it's an actual fact, but I think the males molt more often and they grow faster to their matured size, whereas the females, they take a long time between molts, like almost a year, maybe two.
Yeah, I've had a tarantula that took, it was a year. It had to be.
You forget the last time they molted, it's been so long. And then
but when it happened, you're like, yes!
Yeah, exactly. I was really psyched. So I found that she had molted, and I pulled out the molt, and geez, the molt's like the size of my hand.
Right.
So now she's even bigger than that. But she's such a sweet tarantula. She's the one I've had the longest. Just a real simple Mexican curly hair. It's like a black tarantula with real fluffy hairs, like an Eskimo sweater hood, like just fur like popping off of it.
How long have you had it?
She's probably about 6 years old now.
Yep. And
she eats well. I've tried to breed her twice, and I just think the males aren't getting the job done. You know, and the first male died. I still have another male, but it's hard to see them. They do like a little tarantula dance before they mate, and then the male has to run up, and he has these like hooks, almost like barbs, on the front of his two front legs, and he runs up on the female and grasps her fangs with those hooks, and then has to like get underneath and like do whatever they do.
That's his thing.
Yeah, and then he has to break away and run off like really fast, otherwise
she'll get him.
There's a tendency for the females to eat the males as soon as they're done mating, but I haven't had her attack another male. I think her demeanor is just so sweet that like she's not a vicious tarantula by any means. So that was the first tarantula, and then yesterday I came home and discovered that my Mexican red knee had molted.
It's molting season.
Yeah, it seems like when one molts within like a 2-week span, like all of them do.
They all do.
So I'm expecting more.
I think I've noticed that too.
Yeah, they're on like a cycle. They just go together. So the Mexican red knee molted, and it's been like a year. It feels like at least like 9 months, if not more.
How long have you had the red knee?
Like 2 years, I want to say, and then I have another red knee that she's probably like 4 years old. So the 4-year-old is about 6 inches long, and the 2-year-old is about 4 inches long now.
Right.
And then when they start out as just tiny little slings, once again, you know, watching them molt and watching them grow, and every time they molt, all the dull colors are just gone. They burst with like just so many vibrant, I mean, all their features, all their attributes. The Mexican red knee has those golden orangish red bands around their leg.
Well, you definitely have to have patience to have a tarantula, especially if you get it in a sling, because it takes forever for them to really start, you know, showing what they're going to be, you know. Won't even look like anything until, you know, months down the road.
Exactly. When you get a sling, it's just like translucent.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Right.
You just go on a whim and think that they sold you what they said they did.
Yeah.
And some of them, it's a little more, you know, noticeable. Like when I got my Brazilian white knee, it was a tiny little translucent sling,
see the bands
but
on
you
the
can
legs.
see the stripes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like you can actually tell. Okay, when this thing gets bigger, that's going to be a major feature about it. You're going to notice that. So, I want to talk a little bit more about... Oh, before I jump into that...
This happened a few minutes ago.
Yeah,
actually.
we were just stepping around, setting everything up, and I noticed my Asian water monitor, Chester, in her tank, and every time I walk by, Oh, let me correct myself. I thought it was a boy.
Right.
I walk by the tank, and there's a freaking egg in the tank. Like, wow! Like, I thought you were a guy this whole time. But turns out Chester is a girl. Chesty.
Chesty.
Yeah, whatever you want to call her
Chesty.
now. It's...
Yeah. You were told, too, it was a male.
That's what I'm saying, but I got him pretty young.
Yeah.
You know, when I got him, he was only probably about
Sure.
8-9 inches long, from like nose to the tip of his tail.
Right.
He was like a large, like, gecko, it seemed like. But then he started to gain a little more girth and body mass. And
I swear, after this past year, that thing is like tripled.
every year, I've
Tripled.
been told they grow like a foot.
I swear, he
So-
just got bulky and so much bigger.
Yeah,
last time I
so
seen it.
she's about 2.5 years old and over 3 foot long.
Is that weird saying she now?
I guess, yeah. I was in shock, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like, I
Right.
could not believe it. You know, all this time, and I love that lizard so much. It's the smartest animal I've ever worked with, and it's just so entertaining to watch, too.
Yeah. That
Because-
thing's fed so good, too.
Oh, yeah,
like,
I take good
that
care
thing-
of her.
That thing eats like a queen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a queen now.
Yeah.
It's so weird. I was seriously, like, in awe. I could not believe it. And I know the egg's infertile, obviously. She's never had a mate.
Right.
And I had no idea. But now that answers itself. And that's another thing, is reptiles can be very finicky when it comes to sexing them and deciding if it's a male or a female.
Right.
You know, certain ones do certain things that you notice. Like, my buddy had a large black throat monitor, and every time you'd take it out and it would be crawling across, like, the floor, his hemipenes would come out and drag on the floor and kind of, like, scent it, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Like, mark his territory. But those things were weird looking, man. Like, you just notice him doing it. Like, they like to show it off, I guess. Like, you know when it's a male, and they're, like, proud of it.
Well, that's the thing, is like sometimes you can't tell if it's male or female from just like the undercarriage. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's different things like size and, you know, different
Their behavior, their patterns.
their patterns.
You know, a lot of it can be, you know, distinguished by, like, the color of their skin.
Right.
And, like,
Yeah, that's what I'm
size,
saying is-
the size that they get.
you kind of have to go off other things to try to, you know, sex these things. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad about it. It's like,
Yeah.
you told me it was a boy! What the hell? And it's
Right.
like, nope, I don't care if it's a male or female, as long as I just love the reptile
and that was
for
your
what
first
it is.
Asian water monitor, right?
Actually, it was my second.
Second.
I got one before that I bought off somebody at a reptile show. And, you know, I thought he was one of the only people at the show that had water monitors. And I'd really thought about getting one.
Mhm.
So I paid for it, and I brought it home, and I had it in a really nice setup. I mean, obviously, I did my research. I didn't just jump into it and buy an Asian water monitor as my first pet.
Right.
So I had the setup, you know, plenty of humidity, plenty of dirt for it to dig through, a big water bowl for it to swim in,
Yeah.
you know, and the heat lamps, like everything, you name it. So it died within like 2-3 weeks
Mhm.
of me owning it. And every time I'd feed it, it would vomit whatever food I gave it, you know,
Right. I
super
remember that.
worms
Mhm.
and pinky mice. Like, it would attack it, but then it couldn't keep it down.
Right.
And like I said, you know, the first week I thought it was just, you know, getting acclimated to its new enclosure at its new home, which sometimes, you know, you got to let them just go through the motions and get used to where they are before you start just reaching in and grabbing them and stressing them out, really.
Yeah.
So I let him sit there, you know, I freshened his water every day, just kept it clean, kept him healthy, and just out of nowhere came home and it was dead. So I even called the guy and was like, yeah, I had his business card, I believe, and I was like, listen, you know, like, I've wanted one of these things for a very long time, and I did all my research, and I've known about them, and my friends have had them, so, like, I know their behaviors, I guess you could say, like, I feel like.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know until it was hands-on, and, the guy was an asshole. He was like, oh, sorry, nothing I can do.
Not my problem.
There's probably something wrong with your setup. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, who the fuck do you think you are? You know, like, don't try and school me. Like, I know enough.
Right.
Like, I'm not just an idiot who bought a water monitor for no reason.
I mean, I kind of had the same issue with the chameleon that I got from there. And I don't think he lasted, more than like 2 weeks.
And it's also, there's a big difference between wild-caught reptiles and the captive bred
Right, and that's what I was
reptiles.
told, is that it was from different people at Repticon and stuff, is like, that guy, like, wild catches those things. Like,
Yeah.
you're taking a risk.
They go to friggin'
buying
Madagascar
from him. Yeah.
and just scoop a whole pillowcase
Right.
full of chameleons and bring them home.
Right.
And you don't know what kind of parasites they might have. You don't
Yeah.
know what they're used to. They go from being a wild animal to free range wherever
Right.
to, you know, a friggin' screen cage.
Mhm.
You know, you got to have the right lights for them because they need the special UVA or UVB to.
Right.
It
And-
helps grow their bones. It gives them calcium.
Exactly. But, I don't know, going from a wild caught, just, like, you can tell, just, like, the difference.
Yeah, the behavior. I
it's-
mean, wild caughts are definitely a lot more flighty and skittish, whereas, captive bred, you can just, like, lay with it.
Right.
They're very sweet, very calm, and, so that was the first water monitor. The guy was a dick. I told him I'd never buy from him again, and I told a friend of mine, what had happened, and he was like, "Who'd you get it from?" And I told him, and he's like, "Oh man,
Yeah.
why didn't you just come to me?" And it's like, you weren't there. My bad. Like,
Yeah.
I really would have.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I wanted it, and I paid for it. It was something I thought was gonna be a long time pet. Not that it was gonna be like flushed down the drain in like a couple of weeks.
And that's what sucks too, is when you spend money like that.
I didn't actually
like,
do that, by the way.
is when you spend money on on something like that, and 2 weeks later you find out this guy's shady as hell,
Exactly.
and you just wasted the money, and the poor thing died. Like,
Right. And it's like, I know that there's dewormers and stuff that they
Mhm.
could give the animals before they sell them.
Right.
People who usually have that many reptiles, they have access to those medications.
Right.
I know Panicure is a good one that really helps. But so my friend says, "You know what? I feel really bad about the whole experience, like, I know how much you wanted one, and the shop he was working in had just ordered, I want to say 6 of them." And he said, "One of them's yours."
Nice.
Yeah, so that was really incredibly amazing. Like, the greatest thing that has ever happened in my reptile life. Him getting me a very pretty captive bred Asian water monitor.
I took some shots of her earlier, so I'll throw them up in the video, and
Some shots of whiskey.
some shots of some pictures.
Alright, so now that that's out of the way, tarantula motes, Chester laid an egg. Wow. So
Wow.
I wanted to
Riveting.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about our tarantulas, as some of them had molted. Is when we first got into them, like I said before, we'd found out that there was hundreds of species, and all of them look different, and all of them are unique in their own way. And another thing I thought was crazy about tarantulas is they have the common name, and then they have the scientific name.
Like this scientific name.
Like everybody else, like
Yeah.
everything has a scientific
scientific
name, but I've never seen so many people call it by its scientific name
Tarantulas,
more
yeah,
so than in tarantulas.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember we met that one guy
Yeah.
where he called everything in its scientific name,
Like,
and it's like, I have no idea what you're
what?
talking about. It's like, oh, cobalt blue, like, oh,
okay.
I know that.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta dumb it down a little bit. For,
Yeah, like not
we're
everybody's
new to this.
Not
yeah.
everybody's that influenced to where they.
I mean, I'm definitely not. Like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go by the scientific name and stuff. But
I only knew a handful of them, but I wrote down a list of all of them that I currently have, and I know I've had many, many more, but this is just, some of these are crazy. So we own a Lasiodora parahybana, which is a giant Brazilian giant salmon. It's like a black tarantula with these like light pink hairs, and they get humongous. And that's what your gumball was.
Right.
The first tarantula we got was the Brazilian giant salmon.
We're gonna have to do a spelling bee bit on here. Give me that list, and I'm gonna have to make you spell it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny, man. Incorrect.
Can you put
you
it in
suck.
Can you put it in a sentence, please?
The Laciador parahybana came from the Bahamas. Not really. I don't know. Okay, so there's the Brachypelma albopilosum. And that's my Mexican curly hairs. The one that just molted, and I have a male, and I have another suspected female. So I have 3 curly hairs. And like I said, black tarantula, puff of fur, the furriest tarantula I've ever seen. Moving on, we got Brachypelma smithi, which is the Mexican red knee. I also have 2 of those. And like I said, one's about 6.5 inches, the other one's 4. The Cyclosternum pentalore is the Guatemalan tiger rump. Now that's one I never had before, but I've had another one on the list is the Psalmopoeus erminia, which is a Venezuelan sun tiger. And both of the tarantulas have a black and orange striped rump. Like a tiger.
No, yeah, I recently brought that up to you. I was like, I had never seen one before.
And I was like, yeah, you know I've got one of those, right?
Like, wow. Yeah, it's Tony the Tiger.
It really is, but its legs are so black, and the carpus is orange, and the rump is black and orange stripes.
Definitely very cool.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And just the fact, like, this guy had a bunch of tarantulas, and he just gave me a list, and I was like, ooh, that sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take one of those. And now I've had it for, like, probably about 4 months, and wow, like, it's really freaking cool, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little faster, more of like an old world terrestrial.
Yeah. Old world.
But I think it's very cool looking, and I can't wait to see it get bigger, you know. Alright, I have the Nandu caraponsis, and that's a Brazilian red, which to me kind of looks like the giant salmon. It's more like a black with like red hairs rather than the pink. But their standard shape is nearly, to me, about the same.
About the same.
The way I see them. She actually has some kind of curly hairs on her too. She's like the super tarantula.
Nice.
And I held her once. You know, came home one night and noticed her moving around. I'm like, I'm gonna take you out. And I was able to get her in my hand, and it was like, wow, I never held this before. I've had it for like a year.
Yeah.
And I just decided one day it's gonna get done.
Right.
So that's cool. The Nandu chromatus is the Brazilian red and white, which honestly is one of my favorite tarantulas ever so far.
Right.
So I have the Brazilian red and white. I also have had a Brazilian white knee, which is about the same. The white knee is more like solid black with the white stripes, and then the red and white has like
red rump.
Well, it's got the red rump, like a white carpus, and then the striped knees. So it's like a bunch of different ones rolled into one. Right. So I thought that was really cool. And I have a Heteroscodra maculata, and that's the Togo starburst tarantula, or the ornamental baboon, which is a dwarf species, but she's still pretty big, you know.
What is that name again? Say that again.
Heteroscodra maculata, and that's the Togo starburst, or ornamental baboon tarantula. That's the fastest one in the house.
That's
I
a hell of a name.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister for sure.
It sounds like a Starbucks drink.
Here, drink this. It'll knock your socks off.
Drink this hetero mocha latte.
We also call it the Togo starburst.
All right.
So. People order that all the time. And then, last but not least, I have the Heterometris indus, and that's my Asian forest scorpion. The only non-tarantula in the arachnids that I own. And it's funny because I've never, ever been bit by a tarantula. they flicked hairs at me, and
Yeah.
your hands itch for like 5 minutes, but it's not the worst thing. But I've never been bitten by one. But I have been stung by my Asian forest scorpion.
That thing's funny, man.
It is. So I don't want to say I was messing with it, but I wanted to pick it up and hold it so I could clean out its enclosure a little bit. And I was told a trick is you can pinch the tail and just lift them up,
Right.
and they hang there, and then you set them in your hand, and they won't run around or anything. They'll actually just stay there. So I go to grab his tail, and he reached his stinger around and stung the side of my thumb. And it was pretty painful. Like, ow, ow! You know, like, it really hurt.
Yeah.
But I put ice on it right away, and I didn't feel any, like, symptoms. Just like a needle
I
being,
think it was
like,
just too
stuck.
small, like maybe.
I thought you got to worry about the smaller ones. Or maybe that's just with snakes. I don't know. But he stung me, and it hurt, but it only felt like someone was, like, pinching a needle into your finger.
Right.
And, like, unwillingly, like, ow! Like, that sucks. So I didn't even have him lifted up, and I just let go of him, and was just like, you little bastard. Like,
shit.
yeah, like, I've held you many times before, and now you decide to do this.
It just wasn't the right time or the right day.
I guess, right? I had to catch him in the right mood. So I always test the arachnids, the tarantulas, the scorpion. I use a chopstick, and I'll rub on the side of their body to see what their mood is like. Sometimes they'll turn around and bite into the wooden chopstick immediately. It's like, whoa, glad that wasn't my
not today.
finger.
Not today.
Yeah, so, and then sometimes you brush against them and they'll just gently kind of walk forward or move around a little bit. Sometimes they'll flick hairs, you know, rub their leg against their rump, and it looks like a dandelion, like, puh,
Right.
just like urticated hairs that feel like fiberglass in your finger. It itches like crazy.
Irritation.
Yeah, that's the way that they try and get you without biting. So, actually, let's do an example. Here we go.
Alright, so we're going to mess with this.
This is my Brazilian red and white, the Nandu chromatus, named Taffy. Hey, Taffy. See, just kind of deciding that the stick is okay. It's not attacking it.
Just kind of, we're curious. And that's
Now,
That's what
I've
people
never
don't-
held this one before.
people think that tarantulas are just like out to bite you, and it's their last like mode of defense. It's the last thing that they really want to do. So,
And there it goes.
well,
Oh,
Here.
shit. I feel it going down my shirt. Oh, fuck, it's down my leg. I got him. This is a fast little bugger. Jeez.
zipping around.
He's really zipping around.
All right.
I'm gonna put him back. I don't need to have him run out on me. That was gnarly. But see, you just gotta keep your
That's
cool.
funny.
Don't freak out. Like, like there's a tarantula on
Well,
me.
you know, and they'll want to.
Woo! That's a rush.
If they feel
I
pressure,
just held that tarantula for the first time. I've never held it. I've had it for like probably about 4 or 5 months now. It's
Wow.
molted, I want to say, once or twice
it's
already.
a fast little shit.
It was, yeah. And I've actually held ornamental tarantulas that have been like that, but even faster.
Like,
But
oh shit, this thing's on my
shot
back.
right up my arm to my shoulder, and then I had to have a friend like coax it back down my arm so I could put it away, because I wasn't trying to like reach around and grab that.
Right.
No way. So yeah, little hands-on experience here at the Reptile Radio Extravaganza.
Yeah, it's this week's theme is tarantulas.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about them for sure. So, I mean, not all tarantulas are that way.
No.
You know, a lot of them, they'll actually just sit in your hand. They won't try to run.
I feel like the bigger they are, the just kind of slower they get, and the more calmed down they are, you can just sit in your hand. It always seems like those little ones just kind of scurry around like that.
Yep. They want to explore, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying their best to run away. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of them I came to know as their scientific name.
Okay.
For a good example, the P. metallica. It's a ornamental tarantula that is a bright blue with gray and yellow, and it's really sought after in the reptile trade, you know, for how vibrant and pretty they look. They're a little more expensive for a tarantula, but it's worth it to somebody who really wants one.
And that's Old World too.
Yes, it's an Old World tarantula. But it took me a couple of years to find out that the common name for this tarantula is the Goody sapphire ornamental tarantula. And it's like, yeah, Goody. I wonder what the guy thought about it. I mean, some of these names are just so goofy sounding.
Yeah.
Like, so this guy's probably walking through the forest. He spots a P. metallica on like a tree or something. He's like, oh man, that tarantula's got a good booty. It's a Goody.
Goody. Look at that rump.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it a Goody sapphire for sure.
Oh man. But
like,
yeah, we have a plate of tarantula molts here.
yeah, I've kept nearly every molt
So
that
I'm gonna throw this
has
here.
ever happened.
It's like a plate of chips.
Yeah, well, it's not even every molt because there's been so many that just break apart because it's like a dried leaf. I mean, you could crumble that in your hand.
It is kind of crumbling, so I'm gonna be very careful with that.
Yeah,
But
and that's the most recent one, my Mexican curly hair that I explained.
how many do you think are there?
Probably like at least 25 on this plate.
At least
From
various
from small to big,
sizes here,
different
too.
species. You know, like, and you can always tell what's what based on looking at it. Like, there's the Brazilian giant salmon. I can already tell. This is my ghost ornamental. Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, let me see this thing.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, look at that fucker.
The ghost ornamental. This is one of the sun tigers, I believe. I got see, they're falling apart. Some of them, they just crumble. This is a Brazilian white knee molt, but you know, you could just take it off, crumble it up, and it just turns into like pretty much like dust. There's nothing there. Now it's sticking to the table.
It's like a
Okay.
scab collection.
I'm not weird.
Definitely
So
interesting though.
Let me-
You
let
come
me
over to
get out.
Dan's house, and this is what's on the counter.
Here, let me get
Definitely,
out.
there's a little bit of everything in here. You got a variety here. You got a cheese platter of molts here.
Oh, fuck. There you go. And here's the big Mexican curly hair that just molted. She's actually being a little more active than
I wonder if
usual.
it's this AC unit. Maybe this.
Maybe, yeah, if it's blowing on her, she'll get kind of freaked out, but
She's calming down a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah. Usually
She's
you
rearing
just-
up a little bit.
No,
but
I mean, you get her to a
Just getting her
solid
footing.
spot, yeah. She's just a little woozy, I guess. She's
she's
putting
definitely
web,
putting some web
yeah,
down.
putting web all over me. Oh my god. She's crazy. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and put her back. But that's a good example of how big a tarantula gets.
Everyone's being so
Feisty today.
Feisty today.
Running around. But that's my 6-year-old Mexican curly hair Mischief is her name. And she's been a good tarantula. You know, I've held her a lot and she always eats. You know, never had a problem with her. And yeah, she's really cool. So, oh, also some new news. New news. New news. I acquired 2 veiled chameleons this week
right.
through a friend. You know, I really appreciate that they reached out to me, and I guess the person who had them before wasn't taking very good care of them, and they knew that she had reptiles, so she took them in and had them for a good while.
Okay.
And she just wasn't
I guess, so much into chameleons, and they are very specific when it comes to their needs. So I told her that, you know, I have a chameleon tattoo on me. Like, I love chameleons. I know everything, at least I think I know enough about them, that I can take care of them and they will thrive and flourish. Because one thing about chameleons is sometimes they're not the hardiest reptile.
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
I feel like
the most finicky reptile ever.
Yeah, 1 week they're perfectly fine and they eat a whole lot and they're basking in their light, and then the next week they start looking sick, and then it's like they're just like a puff of air, so it's hard to even determine what their illness may be. So we've had a decent number of chameleons, and you know, some have done very well and some of them maybe not so much.
Right.
But that could also be where it came from and what have you, you know. But these two veiled chameleons, it's a pair, a male and a female. And the female is very sweet. A very bright, almost like lime green color to her. And she only has like a few little spots on her. And that's a difference you can tell between the males and the females.
Right.
Is the male has like bars, like scales that are just darker and like they have shapes to them, whereas the females, they're more just like a flat green, maybe some spots, maybe like a white stripe, you know, but they don't have the bars like the males. And also the males have like a little, like, I don't want to say like a barb, like a thumb on the back of their paw. And you can instantly tell a male from a female because the males have them and the females don't.
Do not.
So I bring them home. I got them all set up. They ate hornworms like pigs the first 2 days that I had them. And actually, the male just bit into it, didn't use his tongue. But the female, I saw her actually shoot her tongue out and get a hornworm.
Right.
So both of them are eating. They're doing very well. And I hope to have them for a very long time. You know, it's over time you learn more and more about every species, no matter how many you've had. But when they come into your care, you know what they might like and what they might not. So I'm very excited to have chameleons again. It's been a long time, and you know, they're great. They're very pretty, very amazing animals, but not always the easiest to care for. It's not like a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko where they're just very hardy. You know, they live forever as long as you just take care of them.
It'll probably be my next purchase too. Probably I'll get a chameleon again.
You want another one?
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
I love the Jacksons, dude.
Me too!
I've always just loved the Jacksons.
The Jacksons are a three-horned chameleon, and only the males have the horns. The females are just flat. Like, they have like a small little crest on the back of their head. And also, an interesting fact is the Jackson chameleons are live-bearing. The female just like, boom, like shoots out a bunch of babies,
right.
And they just start instantly like moving their arms and just climb around. And I don't know if you necessarily have to separate them from the mother like immediately. I don't know if they're prone to eating the babies like it's a bug.
We never really got into like breeding chameleons.
I had a pair of Jacksons one time, and for some reason, things just didn't work out.
Right.
You know, we lost the male, and then the female lived for a long time, but just never gave birth to any baby chameleons. And, okay, I'll go down a list. I've had a Senegal chameleon. I've had veiled chameleons. I had a ocelot chameleon, which is like a Madagascar giant. I've had, what was it, a graceful chameleon like you've had?
Yeah.
So what have you had?
Pretty much all those.
Yeah, the Jackson, the veiled, the graceful, the Senegal.
Basic.
Yeah, the Senegals and the gracefuls are a real basic chameleon. They don't have the large crest like the veiled chameleons do. Yeah. And kind of the same, I had the ocelot's chameleon was a big female, so she didn't have a crest, but she was pretty damn large. Yeah. And honestly, I love the Jacksons. Just the 3 horns just adds to their beauty.
Adds
like,
to it, yeah.
It really just makes them like amazing chameleons, and they don't get very large.
No.
You know, maybe like 8-10 inches, maybe a little more if they get really big.
Right.
But honestly, I had a veiled chameleon that I swear to you was like 2 foot long.
Right.
He was a big boy, and he did really well. And so now that I have these 2, you know, I just want to make sure that they're well cared for and that they have very full lives. And now I feel like I know more than I did even before when we had them. It's been a little while. It's been a couple of years, actually. So just to be hands-on with chameleons again is just fantastic.
Yeah.
It just makes me so happy. I mean, every one of these animals just have a place in my heart that you can't be filled with anything else. I feel like every one of my pets have names, and I call them pets because I'm not one to just buy something and flip it to the next person. Oh, this is what I got, pay me this. Like, no. Anything that comes into this house,
You have an interest for it.
it
and you want to
stays.
learn about it. Yeah.
Everything that comes here has a name, has a place, is well fed, you know, to whatever environment that they need to be in to thrive. You know, I've done my research. I've done this a long time. Like, I love doing it.
Yeah,
So-
Dan's reptile daycare.
Yeah, the reptile daycare. And once again, I mean, that chimes in. The chameleons, I guess you could say, were rescues. You know, they were given to me with the intent that I would take good care of them. And I always try my best to.
Sure.
So it feels good that people have known me and know that I own these reptiles and see how well they're cared for and openly are like, take this, take this. Have you had one of these? Take this. And I've been lucky enough to get a lot of reptiles just handed to me,
Right.
but none of them have ever gone away.
Mhm.
You know, that's the thing. I don't sell them. I don't do anything like that. I name them
Right.
and keep them forever, you know, as long as I'm allowed to have them, you know.
Right.
So just everything that comes in stays is what I'm saying. So I've definitely owned a lot of different reptiles, but there's also so many that I haven't owned that I would like to own, you know. I've never had a blue-tongued skink. I would like one just to see, you know, what they're like. I know they're a little different than some of the other reptiles that I've had, you know. Every one of them has a specific diet. They eat certain things. I know blue-tongued skinks love snails. Like,
Really?
of all things to eat, like, they love them. They chow down on them. And I like red-eye croc skinks. That's like a little black, like, alligator with, like, an orangish red ring around its black eye.
Yeah.
But I've also been told, you know, they can be a little finicky. You know, they hide out a lot. They need a lot of moisture. And it's not something I'm unprepared for, but just something I haven't dipped into yet.
Right.
And, you know, I've said I'd love another Western hognose. You know, it's the only, like I said, colubrid that I like. I mean, if anything else, if I ever were to get one, would maybe be like a tricolored milk snake or king snake, like a scarlet king snake. You know, looks like the coral snakes, but it's non-venomous. So you get that striped pattern
Yeah.
out of them without the danger involved. But honestly, I think my favorite reptile, if I could ever own one, is a bell phase lace monitor. You know, they're similar to the Asian water monitors, but instead of the black and yellow stripes, they're like black and white, like cow.
Mhm.
I mean, they call it pied, I guess you could say. I wouldn't say it's exactly a pied monitor, but it looks like one, you know. Chunks of white in the scales, and then really dark blacks. So I've just been drawn to them. It's an Australian monitor lizard, so they're not very accessible here in the States. You know, I've seen them when I went to the Daytona show. They had a pair that was probably like $1,700. So it's like,
Jeez.
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna keep them, you better keep them both and
Yeah.
try and like spread them, I guess. But I don't even know if that's one that you need a license, a class 3 license to even have. I mean, they're non-venomous, but they also get very large. And any of these Australian species, there's the Parenti, which is a big Australian monitor lizard. And I haven't heard of anybody, you know, owning them. I've recently, the Nile monitors, I thought Nile monitors were really cool looking, but they have a tendency to be like the meanest, most aggressive monitor lizard. You know, they may be cute when they're little babies, but then they start to grow and realize what they are. And once they do that, they can get very territorial, very vicious. They puff out a lot, and their throat gets real big, like they're trying to look bigger to scare you, intimidate you. So they have now the ornate Nile monitor, which people can buy and keep as a pet. And I've been told that they're a little tamer than the regular just Nile monitors. And it's, you know, definitely crossed my mind. They're very cheap. You know, they're not as expensive as some of these real colorful or really large monitors start to go
And
for.
how big do they get? Like full size?
I mean, like, there's like tree monitors, like blue tree monitors, green tree monitors, and they only max out about like 3 foot. You know, there's some dwarf species that don't get quite as big, but the Nile monitors get like 7 foot long.
Right.
They can get really big. And if you have a 6-7 foot aggressive lizard on your hands, it doesn't sound like my top 10 most favorite things to deal with on a daily basis. You know, I like to enjoy my pets, and a lot of them, even I said before, my blood python, who have a tendency to be aggressive, is just the sweetest snake. Lets me pick him up, carry him around, and never hissed, never opened his mouth, never even tried to strike at me.
Right.
So, yeah, but honestly, my favorite to this day is the lace monitor. I think they're just so amazing looking, and they get pretty big too. So, maybe in the future, how things change so rapidly in the reptile community, you know, I might be able to access one in a few years for a couple $100. You know, who knows? I mean, they could explode and everybody could start breeding them. And
well, I mean, that's how stuff happens sometimes. They just come onto the scene like, oh, okay. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, even with like the morphs, you know, any reptile morph is, you know, it definitely shows off like a different side to the animal that people see this in like a pet store and think that's the norm, but you have no idea how deep it can go and how much can be spliced together and make the most amazing shit you've ever seen.
Right.
And I mean, even just, you know, through like knowledge, just figuring stuff out. Like, I realized I always thought there were only green iguanas, and I liked marine iguanas too. You know, they got like that like crusty, rocky like texture to them, but I always knew about marine iguanas and of course green iguanas. Now they've got
they're like red iguanas,
red, blue. They got the albinos that Tom Crutchfield has his own strain of albino iguanas, and they're like a banana yellow with these pinkish red eyes, just amazing looking creatures, honestly. And I've never owned a iguana. Maybe I cared for one for like a week when I was like a kid, I think I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, a friend of mine growing up, his dad had a big enclosure that was like 8 feet tall, probably like 4 feet wide, like a big like china cabinet looking thing.
Right.
And it housed their 5 foot male iguana.
Yeah.
And
it's expensive to feed one, man. And
it
especially
really
when they
is.
start getting that big, you have to put money
this
in
this
that.
was like elementary school. So we were really young, and he had this huge lizard. This was like my first encounter with a big lizard, and he put on these gardening gloves to handle it because its sharp claws would just slice us like butter, especially as kids, you know. And he took it out one time. We were letting it run around in the living room, and the kid played tuba in the school band. So he had this huge tuba sitting on his couch, and he's like, check this out. He picks up the iguana and he puts it in the tuba hole, like the big booming thing on there. And he blows in it, and the iguana like wasn't phased at all. I mean, it wasn't probably the nicest thing, but when we were kids, we were cracking up. We thought that was the funniest thing, like a giant like fart with the iguana inside. So then we took him out. You know, we were nice to him. We put him back. He wasn't like mad about it, maybe, but he didn't show it.
Right.
So that was one of my first experiences with a big lizard as like a pet.
In a tuba.
Yeah, in a tuba. Oh, I don't even remember its name, but it was a big green iguana. And just how things change so drastically, it blows my mind, and it keeps me interested. You know, I love my tokay geckos. I feel that's another underappreciated reptile, that they're very mean by nature, you know. And actually, back in the Vietnam War, the soldiers used to call them the asshole geckos, because they'd be trying to sleep in tents out in the forest at night, and they'd hear like them barking and making all their noise, and just constantly, like never stopping.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get any rest because of it. So they have kind of a bad rep. Let's put it that way.
I would hear mine at night too. You can. They definitely do that.
I definitely hear them. I have a trio, 2 females and a male, and sometimes, yeah, I'll hear them barking and making noise and rustling around in the tank, but they're very good together. You know, they don't bite each other. They're not mean to each other. They actually, like, I don't even want to say, like, cuddle, but they sleep in, like, close quarters most of the time. So, getting into the tokay geckos, I have this trio. They have bred, and I have successfully hatched baby tokay geckos from them. And they're adorable. You know, they have like the spotted pattern, they have stripes on their tail. It's just, every one of them's unique in its own way. They're all different. But then I started seeing that they had like even morphs in those. They had pied tokay geckos, like a gigantic white gecko. They've had patternless, which is just like a big sky blue, you know, no spots on it, no stripes, just a solid blue giant gecko.
Right.
And it really just interests me. Like, I'm not aiming to make a new morph, but I just liked the look of them. No matter how bad or angry they are, you know, they're more of like a desk pet.
Sure.
You keep it there, you take good care of them, but don't expect to be handling it, you know, like you would a leopard gecko or like an African fat-tailed gecko, ones that, you know, you can fit in your hand.
Right.
I mean, even my Bibrons gecko, you know, that thing looks like a leopard gecko that sticks to the wall, but I was told he has the aggression of a tokay. And I'm like, no, that's impossible. He's too small. You know, he's only like 5-6 inches long. Like, he can't mess me up like a tokay would. So I had him out one time. I had him cradled in my hand, and I started brushing his head with my thumb. Like, you're a cute little guy. And he swung around and chomped the hell out of my finger, and it hurt. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. Like, this little thing just like...
a fierce little bite.
Yeah, it's got a strong bite. It made me bleed a little.
Yeah.
It broke skin. And it's like, I've been nipped by, like, leopard geckos and crested geckos, like, weekly.
Right.
And that's just, like, a little pinch. It doesn't even, like, scratch you. You know, it's like a rubber bite. You don't even feel it.
Right.
But this little guy, for some reason...
Chomped the hell down.
...was out for blood that day, and he took a bite out of me. And I've been more cautious with him. You know, I try to not bother him, you know, or make him stressed out to where he feels he needs to bite me. And I've had times where I could just scoop him up. I'm like, oh, he's cool this time.
Yeah.
Like, he's not trying to rip out my flesh. So I've had a good few bites from different animals. You know, I've been bit by snakes. I've been bit by geckos. I got accidentally kind of nipped by a bearded dragon, but it wasn't like aggressive. It's like I had a piece of lettuce in my hand and it jumped up for it and it's like, ow!
Right.
Like, caught me. It's like, oops. You know, it didn't even hurt. I wasn't even bothered by it. But like I said, never a tarantula, thank God. And never, you know, any of my current boas or the blood python. My current carpet pythons never bit me, though I've been bit by one before, and they just tag you. Tag you up, man. Snap, you know, and you might have like little pinhole like teeth marks in the shape of a mouth, but it's not like I mean, some of them, depending on where they get you, they could draw some pretty decent blood, but
Right.
it's not going to like rip you apart by any means. I even been bit by a monitor lizard, and that sucked because they have like these like serrated teeth that they just bite on you, and all they got to do is shake like a little bit, and they'll just tear you apart. So, but thankfully mine are pretty tame. I've never had an issue. Like, they have bit me in mistake of like food, or like I went to like move the water dish and I had the feeder tongs in my hand, and just stupid careless mistakes. That was my own fault. I didn't blame the lizard or anything. Like, why'd you do that? I thought you loved me.
It's the risk you take.
The what?
I said that's the risk you take.
Yep.
But
I mean, that comes with owning exotic pets in general. I mean, a lot of these aren't used to being in like a home environment. They're used to the wild.
Right.
But I don't want to say even sympathize with them, but when we care for them so unconditionally, I don't know if this is true, but I think that they feel the love and they get attached to you.
Sure.
They imprint on you, I guess you'd say.
well, I mean that's why I said last time that chameleon that I had, I swear, it knew, like it was like a dog
When
when you get
you
home.
walk in the room, it's like, hey,
Comes to you.
hey, come
Yeah.
see me. Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your day?
It's the coolest thing ever.
Aw, you're so nice. Makes you feel good.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've been at this a while. I think we're going to wrap it up now. It's been a good show. We're going to continue doing it. I hope all the listeners out there appreciate what we're doing and continue to give us a chance to just speak our minds and
For sure.
tell our stories, as they unfold. And it's always changing, and we're always having fun doing it. So, once again, some plugs. Reptile Radio Extravaganza is on YouTube. It's on SoundCloud. We're still working on an Instagram. We're going to post a lot of pictures on there, and be sure to follow us on there. Reptile Radio Extravaganza at gmail.com if you have any comments or questions, or if you want to come on the show, if you want to see someone talk about tegus or have a whole episode about snakes, give us a shout out and we'll definitely get back to you, and hopefully you have as fun of an experience as we do doing this for you guys. So once again, I'm Dan.
Brandon. Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.